David Curington.
The way.
Just wanted to show you around.
Indicating.
So,
Symbolic.
parking area. There's lots to see in this house. There's an office just through there.
The Way is my second cassette out on Square is after Mind Maps. And for this one, I got a kick out of taking abstract topics which were distantly related to the actual music, doing a bit of research on them, and then from that pulling together some pretty absurd musical ideas and trying to create some sort of scene where these absurd ideas existed and finding a way to actually mix them together to be something vaguely coherent. And that was a lot of fun. Another inspiration for it was partly anxieties about what my music should be. So, like generally, like not just the specific music for this, but just in general. Like, for example, I've had a few anxieties about, is my music not serious enough? Is it not sort of solemn or have some sort of quasi-religious aura to it? Should it be more beautiful? My music tends to be quite high energy in various ways and relish putting together weird sounds or weird textures or things that are quite rough. And should my music be more impressive in some way? Like impressive in the sense of being having some sort of presence or being explicitly manipulative in some way, either emotionally or otherwise. And from these basic anxieties, I started questioning these basic musical premises. Should music be like that in some sort of way? That led to doing a little bit of research, which sparked all these ideas, which I smashed together into different mixes.
That garden there, that's straight out.
Self-regulatory.
How does that make you feel?
You get all the afternoon sun, so a great place to spend some time in the summer months.
How is that?
It did lead to having a bit more of a clarified approach than Mind Maps, my previous cassette, which was more about free association, instinctive treatings of musical material, using unusual processing methods and recording methods. And it was also quite heavy on improvisation. And that led to Mind Maps having a bit more of a lo-fi quality to it, whereas for this release, there's very clear strands of material, there's very clear ideas, but conceptually it's probably much more elusive. The first track of the cassette is entitled No Touching, and it deals with the idea of musical beauty. And I found, obviously, the core reference for beauty in music comes from Edward Hanslick's On the Musically Beautiful. I couldn't resist taking a few quotations with that, which are whispered by me, and that's counterpointed with automated chapter headings from an article which reframes beauty as the compression of information, which I found quite odd, and also appealed to the math side of me. So this particular article considers beauty as optimally compressed information, and it also has a bit of a feature that what makes music interesting is that it's the first derivative of beauty, or something to that effect. It's sort of like something is interesting if whatever your compressed information state is, it's adding in lots of new information, and that's what makes it interesting, which I suppose is sort of common sense, but it was sort of weird to have a mathematical formulation of it. Anyway, interesting article. I just took chapter headings from that, put it in my usual text-to-speech automated thing that I find online, and that provides a counterpoint to these sort of whimsical Hanslick statements. Also, as a little bit of a nod to the Berio Sinfonia, I realised this after I did it. It features a movement of Mahler's Fifth Symphony, the Adagietto, which is quite beautiful. I think most people would agree, maybe. And also, impressionistic music is quite beautiful from around the turn of the century, so I pulled in the Ravel string quartet, pitch matched those, and created a mashup of them.
Feelings keep coming back like an old spectre haunt us in broad daylight.
Relation to external world.
Just another problem.
Beauty that may arise.
second track is entitled No Meaning. And it deals with music as quasi-religious experience. And there's this basic loop that persists throughout the whole thing that's made from different mashups of different religious ceremonies. And I also did a bit of research on what makes a religious experience a religious experience, what sort of induces this feeling of spirituality. And it's that sort of repetition. So that's what brought me into sort of looping this thing. I very rarely go into looping, but that's what informed this particular track. And I thought I'd subvert that by having texts that were critical of religion kind of whispered in the background, so they're just sort of barely perceptible, and they seem to serve this function as sort of prolonging this kind of tense, serious atmosphere. But then if you actually listen to what I'm saying, it sort of disrupts that quite a lot. And that was blended in with an ASMR track I found, and I thought that sort of provided a bit more of a weird vibe to it and seemed to work. And then I don't think you can talk too much about religion without talking about religious fear and the fear of God, although maybe it's a Christian thing, I don't know explicitly. So that one thing led to another, and I came up with the idea of animal noises as this kind of primal fear. And so I started taking samples of tigers, elephants, crocodiles, and convoluting them with all sorts of other stuff that was already in there. And that produced these kind of weird sort of grumbly samples that enter their way more and more into the track as it goes on. Third track is No Hands, which explores musical gesture and gesture as music. And the main structure of the track is provided by a virtual tour for an estate agent. In the middle of making this, I was in the process of getting a house. And so that's probably how that entered my mind to do that. Also, the job of an estate agent is to literally show you around. So it's all about gesture and all about making something out of visually what's in front of you, often more than what's actually there, and selling it to whoever the customer is. This estate agent tour is punctuated by stock gestural sound effects, and also from reading a bit of research on gesture and how gesture works psychologically, and looking at the various feedback mechanisms that are involved. One is to assess emotional impact. And so I thought, right, well, that's it. I'm getting some sort of generic quotes from counsellors asking, like, how does that make you feel? You must have been all hot and sweaty and things like that I sort of chuck in the music at various points that I thought would be interesting. And there's also the idea of the tau gap, which measures a motion gap between the beginning and end of a gesture. And, being since I got a maths degree, I know about Terence Tao, and so I thought, well, I'll just take little bits where he says his name from various online lectures and stick that in there. And so the tau gap is measured not at all measured, I just sort of thought I'd stick that in there as an idea, between where the music is at a given point and various references. Like, I think there's a tiny bit of Brian Eno in there, a bit of Shoss 5, a little bit of Pharrell Williams' Happy, I think, the very beginning of it. Like you might know that it's that, but it's a very, very, very short sample, and various other things that I can't remember right now. And then the background to it all is the idea that human communication gesturally begins in the womb. And so there's this sort of bubbly fetus in the background that's mimicking all these different gestures in a very sort of loose, it's like it's in a swimming pool after the fact. So whenever these different references enter, the previous ones that are to do with the tau gap material, the fetus, in inverted commas, mimics the pitch and the gestures with a bit of a delayed effect, and that sort of provides the harmonic content for the whole track.
With a new driveway.
Catchment 4.
So you can't always judge a book by its cover.
Catchment 5.
A semi-detached house with that conservatory really does make a difference.
Catchment 6.
The last track of the cassette, which is No Doubt, is a little bit of a corollary. It kind of, I wondered what it would be like with all this insistence on music as religious experience, music as sort of gesturally communicative, music that has to be beautiful. I kind of imagined this. Imagine if I sort of took myself seriously and I either was enforcing all these different parameters or I was outlawing these different ideas. What sort of society would that be? What would that lead to? In a really kind of absurdist way. So the last track deals with that. It has all sorts of things like a prison tour with John Cage and two of the Second Viennese School thrown in jail for not having produced beautiful music, or John Cage, who for a time was interested in completely non-gestural music. Like, for example, that's that quote of him being interested in, can't remember whether it's a Rauschenberg painting or not, and him being interested in the fact that there seems to be no hand there. It's like it was painted with no hands. You can't see that the mark of the painter in any way. And of course, there's also quotes from dictators past and present, dictators who have censored art in various ways for various purposes. So it's very much a coda to the whole cassette, even though I'm not really sure whether you'd be able to tell that. I think it does have a sort of ending to it. It seems like it's the track, to me, listening back to it, that takes itself the most seriously, in a way. It sort of has that quality to it. It's got more of an explicit presence to it. Of course, all of this stuff is just inspiration for me, and it's what led me to producing these musical results. But there is very much something in taking these background ideas. This leads to that idea for material, that leads to this, that leads to this. Oh, what would happen if this and this went together? And what ends up is this weird, fantastical musical scene that you're watching / listening, or imagining that you're watching. And that effect, I think, was probably what I was going for. And all the stuff behind the scenes, all the conceptual stuff, is really just to get me going. So it's not like you need to understand all of that to be able to appreciate the music. How much of it is for me and how much of it I really care that people get, I'm not really sure. But I just hope it's enjoyable to listen to, or at least makes you think, what on earth is that? Or just makes you think, I guess.
I've got just a cell for you if you'd like to go in.